series. Now, if you've been following this series at all, this is for all of our campuses, okay? If you've been following this, you'll know the answer to this question, okay? The word Exodus means a way out, right? Okay, so, and the whole story, again, is about God providing a way out of Egypt for his people. So I've been thinking this week about when have I ever prayed for a way out? And there's been many times, like, I've been lost while I was traveling, a little freaked out about that, or maybe I was going through a desert season like Pastor Craig mentioned last week and, praying for a way out. But one event particularly comes to mind. I remember wanting a way out when I had to attend a high school production of Cats. Now, I don't know if you've seen Cats, but don't. Now, I'm going to go ahead and warn you, I am not into musicals, okay? Like, I'm okay till they start singing, and then I want to leave. You know what I mean? So I already don't like musicals, so sitting through a high school production of Cats was like hallucinating in hell for 2 hours. I don't know what happened. I mean, now I went to see a teenager that invited me. She's a great kid, from the church, but I had no idea what I was getting into. I don't know the name of one cat. I don't know one thing that has happened with these cats. I mean, it was a traumatic level of confusion that I have never experienced before. And I will say that you have to stay till the end. I was going to see, I had to sit through the whole thing, to go up at the end and be like, oh, you did a great job, and whatever that was, So, but I'm telling you, I didn't want to stay till the end. I'm like, she'll understand. I want a way out of here. I need an exodus from the disturbing singing cat people that I still see when I close my eyes. And I know some of you are like, now listen, if you're a fan of cats, please don't email me and be like, I was meow, offended meow. Well, don't do that, okay? Because I won't read it. Here's the thing. All I'm saying is all of us have had those moments where you prayed for an exodus, and that was definitely one of mine, okay? Now, as we're in this book of Exodus, the exodus has already happened. They're out of Egypt. They're roaming through the wilderness trying to get to the promised land. And last week in Exodus, Pastor Craig talked about, when you're in the desert, it's not always a wrong turn. Sometimes we enter those desert seasons of life, and God is always our provider, and He always gives us His presence and His provision in the midst of those difficult circumstances, and we can trust Him. So we know that from last week. So we're still in the wilderness, we're still in the desert, and what's happened is Moses and his camp have kind of gone back, and now they're where Moses lived for about 40 years. They're kind of heading back home and crossing through the hometown. And Moses' family, his father-in-law Jethro, is about to visit him and bring his wife and his 2 sons to him to join him. So what I'm going to do, watch the screens here. Before I go into the outline, I want to show you verse 5 and kind of set up this passage. This is Exodus 18:5. Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, now came to visit Moses in the wilderness. He brought Moses' wife and 2 sons with him, and they arrived while Moses and the people were camped near the mountain of God. So it's a pretty simple visit. Jethro is Moses' father-in-law, and he's, Moses' wife and two kids have been living there with him, so now he's bringing them to Moses and coming to visit. And we actually have a picture of Jethro for you. We're going to show that. There he is, if you've never seen him before. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say, no, that's Jethro from the Beverly Hillbillies. That joke is just for you over 40 crowd. You're welcome, okay? We don't have enough over 40, so jokes. But thank you. I know, they're like, hey, he's speaking to me. That's great. No, that's not Jethro, by the way. Some of you are like, wow, he looks, no. His father-in-law's coming to visit, so family's coming in town. No, pay attention to verse 7, again, just on the screens. So Moses went out to meet his father-in-law. He bowed low and kissed him. They asked about each other's welfare and went into Moses' tent. Moses told his father-in-law everything the Lord had done to Pharaoh in Egypt on behalf of Israel. He also told all about the hardships they experienced along the way and how the Lord had rescued his people from all their troubles. Jethro was delighted when he heard about all the good things the Lord had done for Israel as he rescued them from the hand of the Egyptians. So far, so good. Moses and Jethro are talking, and Moses is catching Jethro up on the whole Exodus series so far, okay? He's telling him all the things that they've been through. We're swapping stories. and Jethro is just amazed at what God has done. They're praising God together. This is all going well. The in-law visit is going well until. And then we go into the one in your outline there, Exodus 18:13. The next day, Moses took his seat to hear the people's disputes against each other. They waited before him from morning till evening. When Moses' father-in-law saw all that Moses was doing for the people, he asked, "What are you really accomplishing here? Why are you trying to do all this alone while everyone stands around you from morning till evening?" Well, that didn't take long. You know how it is? I mean, when the in-laws come to visit, there's always that good time in the beginning where we're all swapping stories and getting updates and everything's good. And then about a day or two in, there's all of a sudden a lot of questions and a lot of suggestions, right? Why do you guys do this with your kids? Why don't you try doing this with your kids? You know, do you ever think about getting your tires checked? You should get your tires checked more often. How can you drink your coffee this strong? Who drinks their coffee this strong? You know, why do you organize your kitchen this way? Don't worry. While you were gone, I reorganized it for you. Don't worry about that. You know, how do you find anything here? Well, are you really happy with your current job? You don't seem happy. Have you lost weight? Why aren't you losing weight? All these kind of things. It's just a lot of questions that all sound like this. How can you do that like this? Why do you do that like this? Why don't you do it like this? And so it's good to know that over 3,000 years from this passage, that in-laws have not changed. It's still the same. So let me set up what's going on. Moses is doing his daily business of settling disputes among the people because he is the judge of the people of Israel. So all of the disputes, civil disputes and property disputes and this and that, they all got to come to Moses. Okay? So he's settling those disputes, and there's case after case, and the line just keeps going, and there's people waiting from morning till evening, and it goes on. Jethro sees all this. And he's asking Moses, why are you trying to do all this alone? And Moses replies to him in verse 15. Moses replied, because the people come to me to get a ruling from God. When a dispute arises, they come to me, and I'm the one who settles the case between the quarreling parties. I inform the people of God's decrees, and I give them his instructions. This is not good, Moses' father-in-law exclaimed. You're going to wear yourself out, and the people too. This job is too heavy a burden for you to handle all by yourself. Now, this is kind of a weird tension now between Moses and Jethro. Families come in town, and they're telling him this is not good what you're doing. And I'm sure that Moses wanted to impress his father-in-law. The last time he saw his father-in-law, he was an aging shepherd. And now he's the spiritual leader of a nation. But Jethro is not impressed. He's looking at what he's doing, wondering why in the world is Moses trying to do all this alone? And his concern is that if Moses tries to do everything himself, he's not going to do anything well. And so what happens is he gives him advice, like a good in-law does, right? They give advice. Verse 19. Now listen to me, and let me give you a word of advice, and may God be with you. You should continue to be the people's representative before God, bringing their disputes to him. Teach them God's decrees and give them his instructions. Show them how to conduct their lives. But select from all the people some capable, honest men who fear God and hate bribes. Appoint them as leaders over groups of 1,000, 150, and 10. They should always be available to solve the people's common disputes, but have them bring the major cases to you. Let the leaders decide the smaller matters themselves. They will help you carry the load, making the task easier for you. If you follow this advice, and if God commands you to do so, then you will be able to endure the pressures, and all these people will go home in peace. Jethro has the weird, tense task of looking Moses in the eyes and telling him, you need help. You're trying to do too much on your own. And the thing is, the burden is too heavy. You're going to burn out doing things this way. So he tells him really simple, delegate responsibilities to some capable leaders that will take the smaller work off of you. If you follow this advice, it's going to go well. Now listen, obviously there's a leadership principle here, okay? And I think there's a lot more to this, and I want to get into that, but I don't want to miss this. If you lead in a business or an organization, or you work in a business or organization, you have to come to that point in what you do where if you don't delegate, you're going to burn out and the whole thing's going to fold. If you can't hand things off and you got to be the person that does it all, you are the lid for your business or organization. Jethro's leadership advice to him was really simple. Hey, start to delegate or start to die. One of those is going to happen. You're either going to burn out and go out, or you're going to start to be able to delegate and hand things off. If you're one of those people that has to major in the majors and the minors, you have a short future in what you're doing. And businesses and organizations grow when you do what only you can do, and you hand off the rest to people who can do it. I think about Pastor Craig and how this church has grown. And, if Pastor Craig, you think about this, if he had to do every hospital visit, every wedding, every funeral, everything, we would never see him. There's 8,000 people here. He would just set up an office at the hospital and the park, just wait for everybody to come in. But he has to hand that off. That's why you bring in other pastors to help carry the load, because he's the pastor, but he needs more pastors. And that's what Jethro's telling him. He's like, listen, you're the judge. That's great, but you need more judges. And maybe for some of you in your business or your organization, you need to realize, look, nobody's challenging you as the leader, but you need more leaders. You need more people to carry the load. This thing has gotten bigger than you. And you can't handle it all anymore. Now, I made this statement up, okay, this next statement. I made it up. I'm going to go ahead and warn you ahead of time, so it may sound a little weird. But here it is. If too much is on your plate, it doesn't mean you need to eat more. It's the name of my new book. It's out in the lobby. No, I'm just kidding. It's a terrible title for a book, by the way. But let me just say it this way. If there's too much on your plate, it doesn't mean you need to eat more. You need to invite someone else to the table. That's the thing. Who is coming along in that table to carry that load for you? Now, before we go deeper into this, I want you to look and see that Moses followed his advice. Verse 24. Moses listened to his father-in-law's advice and followed his suggestions. He chose capable men from all over Israel and appointed them as leaders over the people. He put them in charge of groups of 1,150 and 10. Man, that had to be awkward for the guy that got 10. You know what I'm saying? It's like, oh, my buddy's got 1,000. How many did I get? Okay, 10? Just 10 people. But he's doing 1,000. Okay. I'm going to go to my tent and cry, and then we're going to do this, okay? It's just one of those, that had to be kind of weird. Verse 26, these men were always available to solve the people's common disputes. They brought the major cases to Moses, but they took care of the smaller matters themselves. And soon after this, Moses said goodbye to his father-in-law, who returned to his own land. The plan worked. What do you know? The advice was actually solid advice. Now, obviously, I know that even regardless of what you believe about the Bible, there's some sound leadership principles in here about delegation and all those kind of things, and that's all fine and good. But I think there's a little bit more here. And as we used to say in Tennessee, let's get down to the nitty-gritty, shall we? And here's the statement that I want you to think about. I'm going to say this. It's probably not going to shock anyone. But I want you to seriously think about where you are in life, and I want you to think about this statement. Here it is. It is not God's will for you to burn out. It is not God's will for you to burn out. Even if what you're doing is a great thing, God does not want you to burn out. Now, some of you be like, well, duh. I drove to hear that. Are you kidding me? I want a refund, right? But I want you to think about this for a second. What you're doing may be what God wants you to do, but the way that you're doing it may not be. I want you to think about that for a second. If you're a parent, a spouse, a caregiver, an employer, an employee, or a human being that breathes, you need to at some point look at yourself and honestly ask this question. Am I trying to do too much? Am I overwhelmed? Am I trying to do it on my own? Now, let me go ahead and tell you, I already know the pushback on this. Well, Pastor Matt, I'd like you to tell me what I could take off my plate. I'll show you my plate, and I'll just let you pick. Because I cannot take anything off my plate. And that may be true. But are you the only one sitting in front of it? That's the question I'm asking. Are you the only one trying to face all this by yourself? Because that is a bigger problem. You will burn out if you do not learn how to ask for help. And I know, oh, no, it's a pride thing for me. I cannot ask for help. No, if you don't learn how to eat your pride and ask for help, you're going to go down a dark, dark road of burnout. Only because you insist on doing it all. You insist on taking the load by yourself. Again, what you're doing may be good, but the way that you're doing it may not be good. I heard a pastor a long time ago. His name's Bill Hybels. He leads one of the biggest churches in the United States, and he has some personal issues with stress and burnout. And one of the things he said that I thought was really good is he said this statement, I never forgot it. He said, the way I was doing the work of God was destroying the work of God in me. What do you think about that? The way I was doing what he wants me to do was destroying what he wanted to do in me. If you cannot break down and ask for help, then you will have a breakdown, a real one. You know, the thing is, the way that we do things, you know, it affects our health. I mean, heart disease, anxiety, high blood pressure, those are very real things. Those are not myths. Those are real things happening to real people because of stress. You ever taken a stress test? That's a great way to feel awesome about yourself. This week, I'm telling you, I ace those stress tests every time. I nail it. I mean, I always score high on those things. And what's so funny is this week, I was like, okay, I'm going to take one. So I took the leading stress test in America. It's called the Holmes and Ray Stress Scale. And the highest score you can get is 600. And if you're healthy, you're below about 150. And man, I ran that thing at 523, baby. Aced it. And I know some of you are like, you're judging me like, oh, Pastor Matt, we need to get a circle around him. No, but listen. Let me be honest with you. I bet if you took it, you would have aced it too. I got a funny feeling that you and I both have our pictures of the dean's list of the stress test, okay? I think we both would have aced it. And the thing is, we live in stressful times. We live in a world full of notifications and appointments. I mean, I have to turn the thing off on my phone all the time. It's like zzz, 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 going off all the time. I'm not that important. I just get so tired of that thing talking to me all the time. Like, I'm just not this busy. I'm not going to be this busy. In a world full of notifications and appointments, I'm telling you, I know it is stressful, but the Bible begs us to live wisely in stressful times. And the reason why is because if you don't, you're going to go out in a burnout. That's what's going to happen. Who have you asked for help? If you're overwhelmed, have you asked anyone for help? Now, let me just say this and kind of go down a side road just for a second. This is part of why the church exists, is that so we can help each other, so that we can lift each other up when we're weighed down, so that we can share each other's burdens. And part of that comes from this passage in your outline here, Galatians 6, 2-3 says, share each other's burdens, and in this way obey the law of Christ. If you think you're too important to help someone, you're only fooling yourself. You're not that important. I like that, Paul getting a little sassy there. I like it. But it's true. We're called to help each other, share the stress and share the burdens for one another. But you got to be open to that. Again, you can't help somebody who doesn't want the help, right? And the thing is, you think about this. This is why, we want the church to be a safe place for people to find other people who will pray for them, help them, encourage them. This is why Grace Family does things like groups and married life and beautiful and courageous and Bible studies. We don't sit in a room and be like, man, let's offer people more stuff to do to keep them from being bored. No, we think let's offer opportunities for people to connect to keep them from going through all this alone. That's the part, that's it. Because we need each other. Moms need to be around other moms. Men need to be around other men. I mean, we need to help each other and connect with each other. Parents need help. I mean, that's why we have ministries to kids and teens, so that someone else is saying the same thing that you're saying to them. But they'll actually listen, right? Isn't that true with teenagers? They've cut you off, and then, so-and-so and so-and-so, group says something to them, and you're like, I've been telling you that for a year. But it's true because, listen, parents need all help they can get. And that's why those things are there to help each other. Listen, if you're in your 20s or 30s, you need to be around other 20s or 30s. That's why they got this event going on the 24th. So, because you guys need to connect with each other. Because let me be honest with you, when you're overwhelmed, Netflix ain't going to help you. You need to be around each other. If you got a little piece of paper when you walked in at whatever campus that you're at, let me sum up that little piece of paper that they're handing you. You don't have to go through this alone. You don't have to bear the burden alone. You could connect with other people that can help. The question that Jethro poses for all of us is just real simple. Are you allowing anyone else to bear the burden? Or are you headed for burnout? Is the way that you're doing your work destroying the work of God in you? You can't even hear God anymore because you can't hear anything anymore. You're running at such a high rate of speed. It does not take courage to do it all. I know those achievement-driven people, you get around them just like, yeah, and I did this the other day, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to hope I get a sticker, and all blah, 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 and they just talk about all the stuff they've done. And man, I get around them, I get stressed out, I got to go take a nap. I'm like, gosh, you stress me out. This achievement driven, like, I got to do all this, I got to do all this. Let me tell you, there's no courage in that. You know what it takes courage? It takes courage for someone who's a perfectionist, who's achievement-driven, to humble down and ask someone for help. That's what takes courage when you say, I'm overwhelmed. Everyone thinks I got it together. I have nothing together, and I need help. I need someone to help me. Just like an in-law, I want to ask you, why do you do this like that? We have to examine the ways that we do things because it affects us. I want to mention a verse that Pastor Craig mentioned last week. I love this verse. Proverbs 14:12 says, there's a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death. Now, some of you are like, well, that's awful strong. I'm not so sure. Because I'm going to be honest with you. The way that seems easier is for you to do it all. That's the way that seems right so many times. That's the way that seems like this is what I should do, is I should constantly take these burdens on because I'm the only one that'll do it right. I'm the only one that'll do it this way. But if you stay on that road, you have to understand something. You may have to give up your emotional health. You may have to give up your physical health to stay on that road. Because the end of that road does not change. It's burnout. How many of you know at all of our campuses, how many, just show hands, you know someone who speeds all the time? I mean, you get in a car with them and you're like, hey man, let's sit in the Daytona 500, okay? Let's dial it down a little bit, okay? You just outran an ambulance that had its lights on. Let's dial it down. So I've always had a struggle with speeding, lead foot kind of thing, and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, I try to really work on that. But I'm telling you something. The thing is, if you know someone who speeds, you know where this is headed. A wreck. It's just a fact. It doesn't matter how smart or educated they are because they're speeding. It doesn't matter how I'm too careful to get in a wreck. I'm too careful. It doesn't matter if you're speeding. It doesn't matter how special you think you are. If you are a speeder, you're going to get in a wreck. And nothing changes that. If you're speeding, that's where it is. No matter how smart you are, no matter how careful you are. And the same is true for some of you. Some of you know that you are speeding. You are moving too fast, and you think you're smart enough to avoid it. You think, oh, I'm too careful. I'll know better. I'll know when to stop. I'll know when to... No. That's not how it works. If you choose to go down the road of burnout, you cannot change its destination. You're not smart enough to change it. You're not special enough to change it. You go down that road, that's where it ends. Burnout, losing your health, all those things happen. Some of you know that you're speeding. You're doing too much. And today you hear the words of Jethro saying to you, this is not good. You're going to wear yourself out. I want to look back at one of the things he said, because I think it's so good. Verse 23, he said, if you follow this advice, if God commands you to do so, then you'll be able to endure the pressures, and all these people will go home in peace. Some of you have no peace in your life, just pressure. It's just a hamster wheel that never stops. And you don't remember what peace felt like. Do you know that peace and pressure are connected? Because in all honesty, you cannot have peace if you insist on taking all the pressure. It's not going to work that way. But if you allow someone else to help you to bear the burden, when you ask for help, when you invite someone in to the plate that you got to sit in front of, we are able to endure the pressure and have real peace in our life. But it's not until you can humble down and ask for help that you're going to get any peace in this situation. It is not God's will for you to burn out. I know what you're doing. You may be the only one that can do it. You may be in a situation. I understand all that, but you got to understand it is not God's will for you to burn out. And sometimes we're reluctant, and it's a pride thing. I don't want to invite anyone into this. I don't want to have to admit that I'm overwhelmed. But if you don't, what is the cost? It may be finally time to ask for help. It may be finally time for you to connect to others and stop doing everything alone. Stop trying to go through everything alone. Maybe in your house there needs to be a family meeting. And we sit down and say, listen, I can't do all this by myself. I need help. We need to redo. It's not that what we're doing is wrong. It's the way we're doing it. And it's going to take a toll on us if we don't do something about it now. We got to change this. You can't change always what you have to do, but you can always change the way that you're doing it. Now I want you to think about this for a second. Moses, now I don't want to give away the end of the book of Exodus early, okay? You're like, oh man. Here's the thing. Moses dies right before they enter the promised land, okay? There's a whole lot of events around that, but here's the thing. If he had not followed Jethro's advice, he could have had a breakdown. He could have died earlier. And do you realize, if you think about this, if Moses had broken down and died in the middle of that desert, they may have never made it to the promised land at all. You think about this. The Exodus itself would have been jeopardized if Moses had not followed this simple advice. Because he would have gotten stressed out, burned out, breakdown, could have died right there in the desert. And then what are they going to do? And I'm going to tell you the truth. Your family could be jeopardized if you insist on doing it all. Your job could be jeopardized. Your life could be jeopardized. There's a lot at stake if we don't look at our stress level and be honest with ourselves and say, it's time to invite some others in. It's time to ask for help. Our pride will cost us. Pride is an expensive thing to have. It takes way more than you ever think it's going to take away from you. And I want to just pray and just ask God for all of us to help us. Give us the courage to invite people into our burdens. But they're going to think that I don't have it all together. Guess what? They already know that. you're the only one convinced that you might. We're all in this together. Everybody's dealing with stuff and you feel out of your league. Everybody's dealing with things and you feel like, I'm overwhelmed. I have no idea how to deal with this. But when we invite other people into those burdens, things change. I really pray that we will humble ourselves and ask for help. And I know that even though this seems like a simple little story between Moses and his father-in-law, and what does that have to do with me? If you take this advice, I truly believe, and that's why I wanted to talk about this, because I really believe it might save somebody's life. Because burnout is real, and it's sad. And it's happening more and more and more. May we heed the words of Jethro and realize it is not good for me to do all this alone, to go through all this alone. It's time to ask for help. Let's pray. Father, I just come to you, and at every campus, I want to lift up those who are doing too much. Those who don't want to admit that they're overwhelmed, but they know deep down inside they're struggling. Some of us insist on trying to do it all alone. We insist on not letting other people in because we just want to feel and sense that people feel like we have it together. Nobody, they don't want to let anybody in. But God, if we don't humble down and deal with this realistically and ask for help, some of us are going down a pretty dark road that's going to take our emotional health away. It's going to take our physical health away. And it doesn't matter how smart or special we are, that's not going to change. So God, I pray for any of those approaching burnout that they hear this weekend and say, I'm making that change. God, help us all to make that change. Help us to ask for the help that we desperately need so that we'll live longer, so that we can do more, enjoy life instead of just trying to barrel through it. In Jesus' name.